When you start your first job, within the first couple days, they hand you a list of 401k plans. And I remember being 22 at the time being like, oh my gosh, it's my first adulting task. But I went straight to my dad. And then I got to thinking about it. Like after setting this up with my dad, I thought, okay, now that my dad has since passed, what do people do if they don't have somebody to like go to and help them out with these kind of tasks? So, and they don't teach you this in college, so you're kind of like screwed. So I want to go over exactly how 401k plans work and how you set them up and all that good stuff. First, we're gonna go over how much I currently have in my 401k right now. We're literally gonna pull up Fidelity and take a look at what it looks like technically on the website. Then we're gonna talk about rollovers, because when you switch employers, you have to roll over your 401k plan to keep contributing to it, so it like has a new plan, I guess. And then lastly, we're gonna talk about some tips on how to save more based on some finance books I've read in the last few years. If you're new here, I'm Liz. I'm a data science manager at Intel, but I film videos on books, productivity, all that fun stuff. So if you're into that, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, let's jump into it. When you first sign up for a 401k retirement plan, they're gonna give you a ton of different options, and I had no idea what they meant. They were like aggressive, super aggressive, not aggressive. But if you're young, since you're like 22 at this time, potentially you're gonna want a very aggressive plan, at least until you're like 30 or 40, and then maybe start looking at other plans. But you want a pretty aggressive plan because you are young and you have time to recover. So you're gonna choose kind of an aggressive plan if they have that, but look for the words target date fund. Now that comes from the book I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which has a terrible title, but the guy has really good detailed information on target date funds and index funds, but he recommends doing target date funds because those funds actually, as you age, they start moving your money into more conservative bonds and stuff like that out of stocks. That's a little bit more aggressive. So you don't have to worry about, as you age, moving your funds. So I like that because I'm extra lazy. Most companies will say they match up to 2 to 5%. So they might say, oh, we match up to 3%. If they don't match, don't worry about this, but good established companies will match a certain percentage. So for example, if they said, oh, we match up to 5%, you're like, what does that mean? They mean that if you put 5% of your yearly salary into your 401k plan, they will put and match you at 5% of your yearly salary and put it into your account too. So it's like double. It's literally free money. That's what they're saying. So there's no reason not to at least put in 5%, because you get both. You get your 5% and their matched 5%. Okay, so now let's take a look on what my retirement account looks like right now. So I have my literal account pulled up for you here. I'm gonna try to hide like all my account numbers and stuff, because this always sketches me out, like whenever I'm showing money. But you can see right here, I have $39,000 in my 401k right now, and I am 25, about to turn 26. So I looked up what the average 401k's accounts you're supposed to have according to like the internet. So right now it says if you're between 25 and 34, you should have 33. So I think we're doing pretty good. Like I think that's pretty good. So you can see I'm actually right in the middle, or actually higher than what that is. So I'm at 39. So we're doing good. You can kind of see it says that I'm on the aggressive growth plan strategy, which makes sense, right? Like I'm young. I picked a target date fund when I was setting it up with Intel, so I think that's what it's in now, but I rarely touch this thing. Like I'll check it every now and then and be like, oh, you know, I have $30,000 or $40,000 in my 401k, but that's pretty much a yearly basis. Other than that, I do not touch this thing. I have it set at 10% of my yearly income through my company, and that's, you have to do that on your company's site. So I have to go into like my company's site to set up the 10%. I think I can edit it in here, but I haven't touched it. Usually they update it once a year. In the beginning of the year, typically around January, they're like, oh, it's time to redo your enrollments and all that. So then you can edit from 10% to 5% or 10% to 15% or make those changes. I know you can also do it in here, I think, but I don't typically touch it. I set my percentage Right now it's at 10 and I just let it be. Now I have rolled over my 401k twice because I switched employers 2 times. So I went from JE Dunn to a consulting company, so I rolled it over there too. Now they were both Fidelity at the time. And then I rolled it over from the consulting company to Intel, and that was another Fidelity rollover. So it was all within Fidelity, which does make things a little bit easier. So you can see here that these are the retirement accounts I had. So this was the consulting company. This was my first job at Dunn, which is JE Dunn Construction. And now here is the Intel account. So you can see they just kind of linger there just to like haunt me that I've switched my job twice in the last year, but it's okay, like we landed somewhere. So that is kind of what it looks like if you switch internally within Fidelity. It's actually really simple. You just have to call them. There's a specific phone number for rollovers for 401k plans. It wasn't that hard, but I waited too long for both of them. I think the Intel one, I was on it, but when I was at the consulting company, I waited months. So I really suggest like roll it over as quickly as you can if you switch jobs. Now we're gonna go over a couple tips that I personally use to save for a retirement plan. My first tip is you're like within the first couple days, you have to set that contribution. I think it might be a month or 3 months, but try to do it as early as possible because you don't want to get used to a paycheck when they're not taking money out and then all of a sudden it switches to them taking like $500 out. Like it is painful. So set it as quickly as possible. Now, if you can afford it, match it 100%. But if you have additional money that you're willing to put in, I suggest 10%. Like that is just, it will set you up right. You won't worry about it later down the road because you always tell yourself, you're like, oh, I'll just do the match and then I'll switch it later. No, you're not gonna do that. Like just get used to that money being out of your account. So that way you're used to the smaller paycheck. So you're not like having to make a decision down the road when you're like, oh, you know what, I could afford putting a couple extra $100 in there. It's like, you're never gonna think like that. So just set it up front and try to do as high as you can do. My second tip is the second thing you want to do is set up an emergency fund. That is so vital because I get scared like investing my money into a 401k plan when I'm like, I can't even save like $100 for the freaking month. So you want to have a little nest egg, try to save up an emergency fund. I chose the value of about $5,000, but I Will Teach You to Be Rich. The book recommends like 3 to 4 months of basically your expenses, so rent, utilities, all that jazz, food, and like make that your goal. But I think I had like a $5,000, like that was the goal. Now my third tip is if you haven't maxed out your 401k, you need to do that first before you start saving in like a Capital One savings accounts. I have a couple Capital One savings accounts and it felt good to like have a couple accounts named like vacation or, you know, filming equipment, things that I wanted to save for. But if you're not at 10% or 11% or what, and you're not maxing out your 401k, that is where your money should be going. If you put it in that Capital One savings account, it feels good, but you're losing money. Like you need to be putting it in your retirement fund. And that's the painful part because you don't see it technically. Like you don't see it collect like you do in the Capital One accounts. And I'm a big fan of those Capital One savings accounts, but just hear me out. You're losing money. If you put it in a Capital One account, you should be maxing out your 401k first and then Roth IRA and then Capital One savings accounts. Now, some companies don't actually even offer 401k plans. Now, if you're in that position, you need to set up what's called a Roth IRA. And that's also my secondary retirement fund, which I set up when I think I was about 23 and I have not touched it since. But I have a video and I will link it here and below on how I set up my Roth IRA through Vanguard. And it has all the details and links and stuff. So check that out. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time.